everyone, welcome back to Sam and Tiff. This is Sam, and no, your eyes are not playing tricks on you. Tiffany is here in the house. She's actually helping me to film this video, but I wanted to make this video uniquely on my own because what I have to share with you today is my own journey. It's my own story. So although our channel is primarily focused on healthy relationships, and Tiffany and I, we aim to have a healthy relationship between us. You can't have a healthy relationship with someone else if you don't have a healthy relationship with yourself. And someone that lives with a scar, and as you can see, the title of this episode is Living with a Scar. And as someone that lives with a scar, I've had to deal with and navigate through my own insecurities through the years and come to terms with myself and come to peace with myself. So this video is specifically dedicated to those of you who, because of a physical injury when you're younger or later on in life, or because perhaps of some sort of a birthmark, you live with a scar every day and it affects you every day. When I was 5 years old, I was in an accident that burned my arm. I have a 3rd degree burn on my arm. I'm going to show it to you. This is a 3rd degree burn, and it wraps around the whole of my arm. And so this scar has been my enemy. I've hated this scar over the years. It's been my insecurity that I literally wear on my sleeve. And it's taught me a couple things about life, and I want to share that with you. So this video is dedicated to those of you who live with a scar, that it has affected you, and it affects you every single day. And I want you to know that I want to tell my story because I believe that there's power in telling your story. I believe that that stories are powerful, that it can inspire, that it can change others. And by telling my own story, I hope that it makes you feel less alone. Many times in my life, I felt alone, as if I was the only one going through something like this. And I hope by telling this story, it helps you to feel less alone. And I'm reaching out to you. And I hope that also it inspires you to tell your own story so that others can know that they're not alone and that they can be inspired by your own video as well. I remember the day it happened. I was 5 years old, like I said, and this took place in South Korea. Back then, we didn't have high-standing kitchen tables that we have now. We had very low kitchen table that we brought into the family room to eat. As a 5-year-old does, I was running around all over the house, and I tripped, and I fell into a hot, boiling pot of kimchi stew. And I burned my arm. My arm went fully into the kimchi stew, and things went from 0 to 100 real quick, and my life changed forever. And since then, I've had 3 major surgeries and many minor procedures to increase mobility. And so essentially, I've spent most of my life in some sort of recovery or trying to navigate through living every day with this scar. So it's something that I've had all my life. And for the longest time, this scar was something that kept me from being happy. This scar was a constant reminder that I was different. I remember praying to God one night as a child, asking him to take the scar away, and waking up disappointed in the morning because I still had the scar. As a child, summers were particularly difficult. As you can imagine, I wanted to hide this scar from others, so I would wear long sleeve shirts every single day, even when it was hot outside. Hiding my shame, hiding the scar was a way for me to protect myself, because I got tired of the stares and got tired of people making fun of me. And so this was something that I could control. Gym classes were particularly hard because I didn't want to change in front of others. So I would go to the bathroom stall and I would change into another long sleeve shirt. And I remember kids asking me, "Aren't you hot? Aren't you hot?" And in my head, I'm like, of course I'm hot. But I never complained, because complaining would draw attention to myself that I didn't want. And I wanted to keep things hidden. So living like this brought a lot of shame. I was always anxious that I would be found out. And I had this secret that I had to protect for myself. You see, the thing about my scar is that it is displayed for the world to see. It is an insecurity that is literally on my sleeve every single day, like I said before. And it is a physical reminder that the wound has healed, but I realized that long after the wound had healed, my heart had not healed, that my heart was still very raw, that my heart still carried with it the pain of being different. I've always felt different my whole life. I've always felt like I was the outlier, right? That I was an outcast. The feeling of rejection and feeling like I'm always on the outside has always been part of my life. Have you ever felt that way? Have you ever felt alone and that no one could understand? I've asked God countless times, why me? Why this? I've never heard an audible voice, but over the years, I've come to learn some things and I've come to some answers, and I like to share them with you. The first lesson that my scar has taught me is to deal with heart issues. As you can imagine, over the years, I've had insecurities that have built up. And because my scar is non-ignorable, you can't hide this. People are going to stare. People are going to ask questions. And over the years, I've had to come to terms with that. And I've had to deal with some heart issues, my own insecurities. But I worry more about you guys, for those of you who have hidden scars. And you don't have to let it out in the open. Or maybe you are too scared to let out in the open. And you have not had time to deal with your heart, the wound of your heart. Or maybe you don't have any scars at all, but things have happened to you and you have wounds of the heart, right? And you need to deal with heart issues. And so my own scar has taught me to deal with my heart issues, because one day I just got tired of it and I let it out. And I just had to deal with stares and questions, and it's helped me to work through some heart issues. How about you? Do you believe that you have some wounds in your heart that you need to work through? I know how difficult it can be, and it still is, but would you consider that letting that out in the open and being brave enough to deal with the questions may facilitate in healing? It may not be easy, but it may be something that would bring healing into your heart. The second way in which my scar has taught me a lesson is to share my story. Several years ago, I was working as a chaplain at a hospital, and chaplains at hospitals work many overnights. And one night I got a page from a nurse saying that there was a woman who wanted to see a chaplain because she was a burn survivor. I remember going into that room and smelling the wound odor, right? Because I've smelled that odor many times on my own arm, and that is just quite a smell that you can never forget. The lady asked me to sit down, and over the course of an hour, she cried and she told her story of abuse and how she was burned and how she came to the hospital. And I listened, and towards the end, I offered this small reflection. I said, ma'am, I don't understand your story fully, and I don't want to take away from your story, but I can relate to you. I can relate to just a little bit of how you feel. And I showed her my arm, and I showed her my scar, and just a little bit of my story here. And she began to cry again, and she looked at me and she said, Chaplain Cho, you do understand. You do. You see, it was in that moment that I realized the power of telling your story, to telling my story, because that brought us together. In that shared suffering, exchanging of our stories brought us together. It made us not feel so isolated or so alone. It helped us to see that even despite the terrible situation, that we were able to connect in our suffering. I don't know, and I'm not certain why God allows certain things to happen in our lives. Theologically, I understand, because I believe that God is sovereign and He's in control of all things. So I could answer that question theologically, but I won't pretend to know the ins and outs of his wisdom and his decisions to allow things to happen. But after my visit with that patient, I began to see my scar as a tool. I began to see my scar as an ally. It suddenly occurred to me, and my perspective changed, that my scar was not my enemy, right? I no longer saw it as a nuisance. In some ways, you may say that it became a gift that I never asked for. My perspective on my scar changed because I no longer saw it as something bad. Why? Because this scar gave me the ability to connect with hurting people. It gave me immense compassion for those that were hurting and are hurting. You know, someone once said, treat everybody with kindness because everyone is fighting a battle that you have no idea about. And I really believe that. And to this day, I make it my life aim to treat everybody with gentleness and kindness, because when I needed that the most, I didn't get it. And I want to be an agent. I want to be someone who can do that for others. That compassion and gentleness and kindness is actually characteristics of a strong person. And without my scar, I would never have learned those things. You see, God in his mystery gave me this scar, and I wouldn't change a thing. I would not ask for God to take it away. In John chapter 20, verse 19 through 20, Jesus stands among his disciples and he shows them his scar. Now this is post-resurrection. Jesus has risen from the dead, and he stands with his disciples, in front of his disciples, and he shows them his scars as a result of the crucifixion. I have to ask, why did he come back? Why did he choose to come back with his scars? And it was this, because his scars represent his love. His scars represent his sacrifice for us. His scars represent my salvation in him. So I can also say that my own scar has meaning, right? It keeps me humble. It keeps me, it reminds me to treat others with complete respect and gentleness, because they may have wounds in their hearts. And I pray that God use me to make that happen for the rest of my life. I want to thank all of you who have stuck around to the end of this video. Thanks for watching this video and listening to my story. I hope that in telling this story, that those of you who live with scars every day may feel less lonely, and that you are not alone. And if you want to reach out to me, please reach out to me in the messenger, and I'd be more than happy to talk with you. And if you thought that this video was helpful, would you subscribe, and would you be willing to support us in our channel so that Tiffany and I can still continue to be a blessing to others. And until we see each other again, take care of yourselves and be healthy. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.